Kia ora koutou. Welcome to Agility Matters, where we look at adaptive organizations responding to the customer needs in a flexible way. Tonight, we have Cheryl Tansey. Cheryl Tansey is a second generation agility coach. Now, she's a Wellingtonian here in New Zealand as well. And I don't think we've actually met face to... No, we have. We've met face-to-face once at Agile on the Beach in Tauranga, which was awesome. But I've been admiring her work for a while, especially on personal agility, which is what we're going to talk about tonight. So remember, guys, subscribe if you haven't subscribed already and get your questions going. Make sure you say, hey, it's so-and-so from so-and-so, and I'm going to call you out, and we're going to ask questions, and we're going to have fun. Welcome to Agility Matters, and welcome, Cheryl.
Welcome. Wow, that's cool. And
how are you?
Well, what I think is, first of all, we need to call out is the most amazing part is that we're almost wearing matching outfits.
That was so planned. It was so planned.
That's are we on trend? That we're just in the same, we're keeping up with the trends, or are we just on the same channel? I don't know. It's cool either way.
I think it's both. Both. It's both. It's definitely, this is the color now for 2021. I
think so. Well, if it wasn't, now it's.
Yeah. So everyone online, remember, this is the color. This is how you wear it. Although I do like the whole geek chic going on with the button done up here, Cheryl. That's awesome. I should have worn a shirt.
Yeah, this is part of being a professional female in the modern day world. High button, hair out.
I think so. I think so. I'm not a female, but I do appreciate where it's going. So welcome everybody. Welcome, Cheryl. Tell us a bit about yourself. So who are you? Where did you come from? And how did you get here?
Yeah, cool. Ko Cheryl tukuingoa. My name is Cheryl. I grew up on the shores of Kapiti, which is in the west coast, the bottom of the North Island on the west coast, which is a really, really special place. And I've actually, interestingly, I'm now living back in this part of the world on that same coastline, which is pretty amazing. And how did I get here? It's a big question, but maybe simply put, I've gone on quite a big journey the last sort of 10 or 15 years, living all around the world, chasing this question, I guess, of is it possible to enjoy going to work? And that question, quite honestly, drives me and the work that I do, because I have a belief that it is possible, and I think more people should be enjoying going to work. And that I guess I share that because it's a huge driver for me. It's a huge motivation for why I do the work that I do. And in more recent years, I've realized that I've uncovered some pretty cool things, certainly for myself, and I'm now on a mission to share those learnings with others so that more people can figure out how they can enjoy going to work. So that's a little bit about me. I also, in case you didn't notice, background included, I'm currently in my office, which includes classic looking agile coach board. This is just, planning out my life. I've also in the background got all sorts of things happening because this was my office. I had a child 6 months ago, and it's become our spare room for all our wonderful visitors to come stay. So that's also a pretty huge component about who I am and what I'm about. So those are a few things to share in.
Love it. And which wine have you got tonight?
So I have a Sauvignon Blanc, which New Zealand is well known for, are our Savs. I am quite partial to anything from the Marlborough or the Hawke's Bay region. And this one is I believe this one's a Tohu wine, which I believe
I like that
is
one.
Possibly made up in Gisborne.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Tohu Sauvignon Blanc is what I've opted for tonight.
Love it. And I said to you earlier on, I'm not joining you, not because Agility Matters is no longer drinking wine. I'm on a water fast at the moment, and I cannot break that currently.
Good on you.
My cleanse.
Great discipline.
Yeah, I guess. Afterwards, I'll feel better. At the moment, it's still a little bit cloudy.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's good fun. I will not say I recommend it in case someone has problems, but it's good fun. Um, awesome. So, what was I going to say? Does agility matter?
Um, so I threw a question out when I was sharing this event tonight, and I reframed it slightly. I hope you don't mind.
All good.
Does personal agility matter?
Of course, yeah.
And I don't know, maybe that answers the same question
Yep.
for other people, but that's certainly a question that's on my mind. So if it's all right with you, that's the angle I'm sort of coming at it with. Okay.
It's an open question, so
Cool.
we've had many answers to this, and I'm quite enjoying these answers at the moment. So
Yeah.
go ahead.
And it was really interesting actually. I watched your I've got a mosquito in here. I watched your talk with Darby the other week.
Nice.
And I love that guy. He kind of went, well, agility doesn't matter. It's to do with the outcomes you're trying to achieve, and agility is one of the ways in which achieving it. And I was like, God, he's nailed the answer to that. What can I possibly follow up with such a great answer?
We may have to edit that past video to stop future people saying the same thing, because it was like a darn it.
Yeah, but to be fair, like he's coming, there's lots of different approaches. And I guess I considered that question coming into this around, does it matter? And he's right in the sense of how you get to somewhere. It doesn't matter how you do it, provided you meet the outcome that you need to achieve. But I certainly, for myself and many people that I work with, understanding ways in which you might get to an outcome and learning ways of which you might get to an outcome are really important, especially if you're not sure how to move forward. And in that sense, being able to know how to move forward, having the tools that you need, are really, really important to help us get to that outcome. And for the work that I'm really focused on at the moment around personal agility, which is taking all the things, the beautiful parts of agile. I personally have a really positive association with the word agile. I know a lot of people don't, but I've had some really positive experiences. Taking agility in terms of the types of things we're trying to achieve with it, and the different tools and methods and practices that are there available to us to achieve that. In my experiences, it's actually helped me to achieve a way of living that is aligned to who I am, helps me show up in a much more disciplined way. You talking about you doing your fasting, like that's discipline. You've got to be connected into a vision. You've got to have some practices in place to maintain that. Like that's some important stuff. And being able to, when things come in and hit you and you've got to change and adapt to it. For me, that stuff really matters in terms of how the quality of my life, in terms of how that shows up. So for me, personal agility really matters because it keeps me accountable to the things that I'm trying to achieve. And it keeps me checking in on, do I know what I'm trying to achieve? Am I checking in on that regularly? Do I have practices in place to make that happen? All of those things. So I guess for me, it matters because I have a greater enjoyment of my life when I live in that way. So yeah, that's
No,
that's how I view it.
I like that a lot. And to add to that, a good example, by the way, and I agree with Darby, I do. I'm just going to add a little thing here. Outcomes are very important, but they can be very short-sighted as well. So, for instance, the outcome of losing weight or being cleansed or being spiritually awoken, or however you want to put why you may do a fast. 11 days into a fast 2 years ago, I had massive cramps in my legs. Now, if the outcomes matter, then I would have carried on. But the potassium deficiency was more important to actually pivot on the new information and change the way I was doing things. So this is where I think agility comes into it, and the fact that you adapt to new data that comes in, irrespective of the outcome you're looking to achieve. Now, Davi will probably say, but there's governing constraints of health there. And I agree. But this is where I think when we dumb it down to a word, which is hard anyway, why it can be a little bit dangerous to say outcomes only. But yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah, and may I, as you're saying that, I'm sort of like my brain's going. Something there that sort of captures me is, you heard about the five whys, right? When you're trying to challenge yourself on the validity of something you're trying to achieve, you ask yourself why, and if you keep asking it enough times, you get deeper and deeper into what's really driving you. And it's interesting, you say about your fasting, for example. You may go, the reason I'm doing it, for example, might be because I would like to lose some weight, or I'd like to, like you talked about those outcomes that you've got. But, the ultimate, and I'm going to throw a coach question at that, is what does that achieve for you? What does that create for you? What is it that losing that weight, what does that mean for you? So sort of diving deeper, because like you said, the outcome might be that's the result that I'll see, but there's actually a deeper reason that we're aiming for that. And
100%. So the objective, for instance, it's high level things, triple O model, right? So objective, outcome, output. The objective for me is I want to be around for my kids and play football with them when they're 15, and not be the lardy 108 kilo guy who can't run 2K. So the objective is very long, or the vision's very long, as you could call it. The outcome is very minor. But yeah, I totally agree. The objectives, and this is why I like triple O model for that exact reason, actually. Both for personal. See, I don't differentiate. I'm probably very similar to you, Cheryl. I don't differentiate between what is a business or a personal. That's why I love personal agility, because to me, if everyone had personal agility, and we'll get into what is actual personal agility, so I'm assuming here a little bit. If everyone had personal agility, then our organizations would have agility by de facto, because people would move on with that. So I quite like that. We're starting to get a few people popping up. So I'll just quickly say kia ora to people. So kia ora Tim, kia ora Mark, and kia ora Colin. Are you ready for a question, Cheryl?
Bring it on. Just tell me who it's from first, in case it's someone that I know and gives me some context.
Oh, good. So Mark Keith's the first question.
Oh, Mark. Oh, Mark Keith. Mark Keith, I went to primary school with.
That's exactly what he just said.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna grab the I'm gonna try and grab the that didn't work.
Oh, look at you working your tech, Michael Law.
I know. I am getting better, honestly. I am getting better.
Oh man, it's confusing.
So Mark says,
and I'm getting bitten by mosquitoes.
Mark Keith says, "Hi Cheryl, Mark from your primary school here."
Feel like I'm on a version of like This Is Your Life.
I love it. You never know where these questions are going to go because it's live.
Awesome.
How do you become aware that you aren't operating in that way? Now, I'm assuming it's referring back to the personal agility and it's aligning your life to your goals. So you can get back to that frame of mind. Oh, so self-awareness question.
So you can get back to that frame of mind. It's funny. That's a great question, Mark. They're like with these sort of broad, crazy, complex questions, there isn't one answer, but certainly from my point of view, awareness, like Michael was just saying there, it's often hard to be aware of what's happening in your world when you're in it. And one of the ways in which I like to try and pull myself out of it, a really simple technique, first of all, is journaling. Journaling, and this is not to bring him back in again, but Davi was a keen advocate of the journaling life, certainly in a professional sense. Have a journal on you at all times, and as things come up in your mind, whether they be ideas or concerns or worries or whatever it is, Note them down, because there's nothing more powerful than getting it out of your head. And there's nothing more powerful than looking at the thoughts that are in your head on a piece of paper and becoming aware that you are thinking the things that you are. Now, journaling being one piece, and actually becoming aware of what it is that's happening internally for you. The next thing is having some sort of scale. And I don't want to put any kind of like version of a score as if you need to be a certain level, but some sort of scale.
Right. Metrics time. What's the metrics?
It's metrics time. Do you know, I wrote a sticky note today. Where is it? Oh God, I've lost it. It was one around metrics, around, I mean, I love metrics, and I love metrics, but from the point of view of helping me check in on where I'm at, and some sort of scale. And I often, when I talk about personal agility, I use a little model called the personal agility tank. And on the personal agility tank, you can imagine there are two axes. And one of them is around energy level, and one of them is around headspace. So when we're looking at our agility, our ability to respond to change, what we're looking at not only is how much energy do we have to respond to that change, because often when we're required to make a change in our life, it takes some energy to do it. So you've got energy on one scale, but the other part that's a really key part of that is our headspace. Are we feeling positive or negative? And I know that they're quite kind of binary, they're one or the other, and you can sit anywhere on that scale. But when you look at what's my energy level like, and what's my headspace? Am I feeling in a really kind of negative headspace, or I'm feeling in a quite a positive headspace? Those two together gives you 4 quadrants. And it starts to open up some insight into your agility to respond to things. And I guess sort of talking into like what Mark was asking about, I'll often check in with myself, and you can do it as simple as 1 to 10, what's my energy level? And most people, whatever their own personal interpretation of what is a 10 and what is a 0, often when I'm working with people, we'll actually define that for them. What does a 10 look like? What does a 0 look like in your energy? But equally, what does a 0 look like when you're in a negative headspace? What's, like a really negative headspace? What does that look like? And then what does a really positive headspace look like? You can then start to plot those two. And it could be as simple as just, as you're journaling or you're capturing how am I feeling today, 0 to 10, 0 to 10, and start to think about where I'm, because what I'm learning is that sometimes you can be in a low energy, positive headspace. When you're in that space, the type of work that you might take on or the activities that you do in your day should be quite different to if you are in a negative headspace, high energy. Because we have those days, right? Sometimes that, and that's probably frantic, Mike. You're frantic and you're just going, man, I've got heaps of energy, but I'm not feeling great about things, but I know I've got to get a lot, high adrenals, everything's happening. The type of things that you work on in that day ideally would be different to the type of things when you're feeling really good, but you're just low energy and you need different. So having a practice of some kind, and like I said, for me, it's journaling. Everyone has different ways in which they do it. I believe you can actually create this yourself. If you're fortunate to have a coach in your life, and I always have my own coach. That's probably the number one thing that's helped me in my coaching, is to have a coach. If you don't have your own coach at the moment, you can use the likes of a journal to sort of give you a pseudo coach, which sort of is yourself coaching yourself. So yeah, those are a couple of thoughts from me. What are your thoughts back on that?
It helps. I love journaling. I've shown mine already. So I've got 4 on the go at one time. I know I shouldn't do. Michael's 4 personas, Michael's 4 clients at the moment. But I don't have a work-life balance. I have a Mikey's life, and I only do things that make me happy. So I'm like yourself. I went through some problems in my, I guess, well, not like yourself, so you haven't said that, but I found what you found in my early 20s from going through a dark period of my life. And then I was like, this is not making me happy. Why am I doing it? And I started journaling back then, and I mixed it in with my work stuff. And I realized I was very unhappy at work and very happy at home. I was very happy with my businesses, but not happy in my contracts. And then I basically just been iterating for 13 years. Was today better than yesterday? No. Why? Can I change something about that? Yes. Good. Great. And I just carry on. So I used to do scoring, actually, very similar to what you said. I stopped there for a couple of years now, but I used to have the top corner of each page, a little number, like out of 5, like how was I feeling? And 1 was like, it's all the world's ending. 5 is like, I'm absolutely amazing, top of the earth. I'm probably having a episode. And somewhere in between. And if I started having a trend downwards, I'd make action. So I totally agree with journaling. I think it's a really good approach. I don't know if my approach actually works, as in combining them, but most of you have a to-do list or some sort of like meetings list. I got to the point where I actually put how happy I was in a meeting. What was the outcome of the meeting? Was this meeting even worth having? I'm not having that meeting anymore. That was a bad meeting and I felt sad. I'm not doing that anymore. So I love journaling for that reason. I also agree with you around the coach aspect. I went many years without a coach, and a lot of coaches who probably watch this will go, but I'm a coach. What do I want a coach for? Why are you telling me I have a coach? I'm great. You can't see outside. The whole point of a good leader or a good coach is someone who's up on the balcony looking down on what actually you're doing, and you can't see that dancing on a dance floor.
Yeah.
So I can look at my journal and I can see trends, but I can't see why. So great, data's there, but I can't ask the right questions that will help me come out of that funk. And I've lost, I don't know about you, Cheryl, but I've lost months of productivity where I've got into a funk and I haven't, it'll be someone, like it'll be the plumber or the school teacher who will say something to me that'll trigger my mind to go, yeah, no, I'm actually not actually happy right now.
Yeah.
Why is that? And I'll quickly go through the journal and go, there. Okay, great. But if I had a coach at that time, it would have been much easier. Now I have obviously a team of coaches who basically we have our sessions. And if anyone's down or I'm down, we chat to each other and bring ourselves up. We create goals together. It's beautiful. So I fully recommend that as well. There's a few other things I enjoy. Exercise. The more I exercise, the more I'm more self-aware. And I think it's probably because for those of you who don't run, when you run, your subconscious mind actually drifts off a lot. And you not only drift off with that, your cortisol levels lower over time and your hormones, happiness hormones like serotonin will increase over time. So what does that happen? It actually allows your brain to connect the dots that you couldn't connect while you're always on the go. So running is actually a really good way of actually coming out of yourself and actually realizing what's going on. So I recommend running as well.
Awesome. Nice. All right. What are these other comments? I want to hear some of the smack that's coming in on the Friday Night Live.
There's no smack. Guys, come on, bring some smack. We'll carry on while you think of some smack, everyone. Kia ora, Mark and Colin. Colin's just saying kind of like the output, outcome, benefit, value conundrum. Yeah, the problem is a lot of times from a business context, and Cheryl, you must have seen this before as well, is we talk about, I mean, the Agile community will always say outcomes, not outputs. And that's very true. But the other conundrum around that is actually what is our objective and what is our goal? What is our vision? Because you shouldn't be going outcomes if you don't understand where you're actually going. And I've heard many clients like say they're outcome focused and they're focusing on outcomes, but they have no strategy and they don't know where they're going. And each like team is basically doing their own thing, which sounds great because they're all empowered, they're having fun, it's full autonomy, but they're actually all unhappy. And can you guess why they're unhappy?
What do you think?
I'm a big believer that without the vision, without the purpose, autonomy means nothing. So if you look at Daniel Pink's, mastery, autonomy, and purpose, right? You can't have two without the three. You can give someone autonomy, that doesn't make them happy. What makes them happy is actually the purpose of why they're doing it. And I think this is where I'm actually writing a speech at the moment, which no one's going to let me say, but it's like why Agile was bad. And I think because where we're going as a community, it's gone to the point now where we're so focused on all these things, like saying outcomes over outputs, and that we've kind of forgotten the reasons why we did these things, like actually connecting the dots to the greater vision of an organization. I met one coach in Wellington who said to me, "Oh no, but I've ring fenced my team." No, you haven't. A ring fence would mean that you're creating your own like service to a certain customer. You're basically, you say you're cutting them off from the rest of their tribe to get high performance how you want it. So that's why they're all unhappy. And they were like, that makes sense. And then we basically reconnected them to the rest of the tribe. Yeah, their performance declined, but their happiness scores went for the roof. And I don't know if you agree, Cheryl, but for me, happiness is probably more important than productivity, because happiness eventually will lead to productivity. What do you think about that?
What's the question? Will happiness lead to
Is
productivity?
happiness more important than productivity?
Does it need to be either or?
It does not need to be either or. So what would you aim for? What would be your first point of call? If a team is unhappy and unproductive, would you try and make them happy first or productive first?
So there's a little model that I use, and again, this is a model in terms of trying to simplify. That's a very complex question you're asking, and there certainly there's no one answer, and I'm sure all different coaches approach it differently. One of the models that was gifted to me by my dad was around the 3 V's, and so you've got velocity, value, and vitality. And if you imagine this triangle as something that you want to, there we go, you want to maintain with a balance, 3 V's. So your velocity, obviously, it's quite a bit of a given, how fast you can get the team moving and effective through their work. Their vitality is, what you're talking about there around how happy are we, how healthy are we, how sustainable is the pace that we're moving. And then value is the third. So how much value are we delivering as a team? And I guess the way that I view it in terms of a triangle with these 3 V's, and you want to keep them all in balance, is the ultimate goal is that all of them are getting love. We are equally managing all 3 of those needs, but there are times where sometimes they get imbalanced. And the key part of it, ultimately, there is not any one that you want to prioritize more, because, and I'm sure, Michael, you've seen it before, when you let one of those run out of control, if all you're worried about is velocity, for example, you might get a team that's delivering a lot of points, but the team are burnt out and they're not high quality, for example, because the value drops and the vitality drops. If you've got a team that is only delivering value, we're often perfectionists. We don't get anything done because we want it to be perfect. And equally, if we only value vitality, then we're only worried about the happiness of the team, and are they happy? And we're happy and we're enjoying turning up to work, but we're not getting anything done, and we're not delivering any value to the customer. And that's not, it's not a good thing for anyone, because we're here to do work for our customer. So I guess my thought on that is, it's around the team recognizing, and the way in which I've done this with teams is scoring. Again, this is coming back to create a metric that allows us to create awareness of where we think we're at, so we can figure out where we need to focus our attention. And I've done it with teams before, with a traffic light, for example. 3 V's, are we a red, yellow, or green in vitality? Are we a red, yellow, or green in our value? Are we, so that the team
like that
evaluate, where are we at? And those metrics, again, are not for us to track, measure, are we staying green? Are we still green? Are we still green? Because if we're not green, then that team needs to be looked at.
If you're not green in happiness scores, I think the budget's not going to cope with your...
Exactly right. And certainly as a coach, you're not doing your job. Any team that's a green in all of those all the time, I will happily work with. And,
I don't share the information. We have a spreadsheet that's on our Google Drive that has all these cultural metrics with teams we're working on. And we're always asked for by leaders, can we see the, it's like asking for the retro notes. Can I see the retro notes? Can I see the happiness scores? Can I see these? I'm like, no. And I used to share them, Cheryl. I used to share them, but 3 out of 5 times they were used for bad measures and then suddenly implemented as actual KPIs. And I'm like, nah. Like, so we keep everything in-house now for our cultural stuff. We look at, we tell you how things have improved and why they've improved, but we won't give you the week-on-week stuff for that exact reason.
Yeah.
Kia ora, Colin, again, by the way. Yes, Colin. So we were right, Cheryl. Colin's question was regarding outcomes not linking to value. And the word value could have a whole hour conversation because it's the in thing now. Like, I had a great conversation with a Melbourne lady just a moment ago regarding linking to value, and we had to stop because I was coming to see you. And but yeah, it's going to more and more people are talking about value. What is value? How it is.
It's awesome. That's a great thing that we want to be in.
It's good to see that they're starting to have a conversation and realizing that actually we can deliver value. That's good.
Yeah.
As opposed to delivering stuff.
Oh man, if we can get people asking that question, I think we're away. Like,
I think we're winning.
I'm hoping that questions about value start trending. That might mean that we don't need to be coaches anymore.
I think it's doing very well because how do you say, like, I think there's a segment in our industry between coaches that focus too much on agile. So exactly to Colin's point just there, maybe just talk about why doing agile was bad. Exactly, Colin. That's where I was kind of going to. Why is agile bad? Is because our market's quite segment, and you're quite prolific on LinkedIn, and same as me, Cheryl. So you probably have seen it. There's like a polar opposite. Some people are all about doing Scrum, and all they want to do is Scrum. And if you're not doing Scrum, you're doing it wrong. And you look at them going, but did you try Scrum and then something else? And was the Scrum more valuable? Don't bring value into this, Michael. We can't measure value. It's impossible. So that's one end. And then the other end, I think people who have suddenly got it have gone, actually, we're doing a little bit of harm. We need to focus on agile as a mindset and actually iterating for really greater competitive advantage for our organization, but also for better outcomes. So before we carry on, because we'll keep carrying on otherwise, I'm terrible at this, I apologize. What is personal agility? You're in an elevator with someone and they want to, hey, Cheryl, what's personal agility? Level 15, go.
Here we go. My definition, and I want to be really clear that it's sort of similar to asking someone what is agile. Everyone has a really different perception, and all I can do is share my perception based on my experiences. Here is how I define it. Personal agility is the ability to easily and consciously respond to change in a direction of intention. And the key words that I'd love to just lift back up from that is easily and consciously, especially the conscious part, and in a direction of intention.
I like the conscious part. So you're aware of it.
You're aware of it. You're aware of the change that you're making. And I'm not sure, Michael, like what your experiences are with, being asked to come into an organization and they go, we need our teams to be agile, or we need to have agility, or however they term it. Often the driver of it is we need to go faster, and we need to adapt and respond faster, which I'm all for, and I have realized through experiences, I'm really good at helping people respond faster to change, and I spend a lot of time learning how to develop the skill in people. But what I started to realize was if you don't have a direction of intention that you're moving towards, you can adapt into something very quickly that you don't want to be. Yep. And if we take this just on even on a personal level, and I use this example last night, we were talking with the Business Agility Institute crew, and I kind of shared this example of how often do you hear people say, where is the year gone? Where is the week gone? How did I end up doing this job? I don't even really know how I ended up like this. We have this ability to create incredible routines and rhythms in our life that almost allow us to step back from consciously making decisions. And when it comes to adapting, I actually don't think we have an inability to adapt as humans. We're very good at adapting. That's how we're still, a species that is controlling the planet. But I think we can adapt very quickly into being something we don't want to be if we're not clear on our direction of intention. And that for me is a really key piece to the personal side of it. And, you know, like you explained, it's also a really key part to an organization side of it. So I guess when I'm working in the personal agility space, I'm taking all of the same values and principles and tools that we use with agile teams, and I'm saying, how do we make these apply on an individual level? Like it's not brand new stuff. Everything that you've learned, whether it be Scrum, whether it be Safe, whatever the tool is that you're using, how can you take some of those practices that you use and practice them on a personal level? And it's actually not as hard as it maybe seems. And a really easy example, you know, you talked about it before around reflection and a personal retrospective. You know, how often do people that are leading agile teams who ask their teams to meet on a regular basis to have a retrospective and to document what they learn and to pick one action that they're going to change for the next sprint? You know, we ask our teams to do this. How often are our leaders doing this? You know, and it's always the classic example of, you know, I remember the leader I spoke to who said, Cheryl, my team are not turning up to our sprint planning sessions and I don't know what to do about it. And you're a coach. I need you to tell them they need to be there because that's really important. And I went, cool, all right. So tell me why it's important. Well, it's important so that we've got clarity on our sprint ahead. We need to know where we're going and we need to define some goals. Awesome. That's a great reason to be there. And I said, what are your goals for this sprint? And you could see in that moment, he kind of went, oh, and he goes, I don't have time to set them. I've got so many things I need to do. And you could see, you know, for him, and I do have empathy, you know, when you are in a position of leadership, there is often 1,000 things pulling your attention. It takes a real discipline and a conscious discipline to actually pause and set goals in the same way it does for our teams. But it's very, very challenging for us to show up as leaders and say it's really important that you do your sprint planning and you set your sprint goals if you're not doing it yourself. And I guess the piece around the personal agility side is how can we actually live these values, these principles, use these same tools in the way that we live our lives? And again, I bring you back to my backlog of work that I'm working on at the moment. You know, people often say, do you actually have post-it notes all over your house? I go, well, of course I do, because that's how I process information. I'm not saying you have to have post-it notes to be agile, but I break the work down. I prioritize. I set goals for myself. I check in on those goals on a regular basis. Those things don't come easily. They are regular practices I've had to embed in how I work, but I know that they make me more effective in the work that I do. And I know that I can get through more value-driven work in less time if I spend a bit of time doing this than if I just go and hit my to-do list and work through everything that's on there. So I guess that's sort of bringing all of this in. What is it? But not just what is it, but why is it valuable and how do you do it? If you are working in an agile space, you already know a huge amount about the how. You just got to try and look at ways in which you can integrate it into your day-to-day life so that when you show up with a team, you can talk about it in real experiences. You can talk about, hey man, I've found it really hard setting my goals this week. Did anyone else find that hard? Versus, you need to set your goals. I don't have time to, but you guys need to.
Oh, 100%. I think you hit the nail on the head a little bit, not only for leaders, but also for coaches as well. The amount of times where I've been the coach of coaches, and then I said, all right, great guys, time for reflection. How do you want to do this? How do we want to improve? It's just this rustle of like, what? I don't understand. Well, obviously you're trialing and erroring things, right, guys? You're testing new ways of doing things. We should communicate that and help each other. So I'm a big believer, if you're telling teams to do something or you're influencing them to do something, you should be doing it yourself. And I got a good example of that for your personal agility. My sister was about 8 years ago. We're doing some goal setting, and she was like, I want to be a millionaire. Great, why? oh, I want to have a house, and I want to stay home and have kids, and I want to blah blah. Why? I'm very blunt with my sister, so I'll just keep going at her. Like, why? No time for this. I want to be happy. Love it. What's happiness to you? And she went from trying to make money to actually setting up all the things that would make her, she thinks, make her happy in small iterations, and then adapting to that on the way. And I mean,
Michael, did you ask her those questions in that succession? So tell me why.
Much.
And tell
yeah, pretty much.
Are your family used to you coaching them?
Yeah, but very bluntly. So, like, people who know me personally know that my close friends and family, I'll just be like, why? And how does that make you feel? And what does that accomplish? How did you measure that? So I'm very blunt, but they've watched me in the workplace and like, why are you nicer to them and not us?
Oh, yeah.
Because you know it's coming, and I ain't got time to, like, you're not paying me. So, but
so your niceness has a price tag.
As bad as it. No, so my sister now has like 4 houses. She's 28, 4 houses. It's kind of insane, right? But it all started off with just asking her why is money. You know what? You don't want money. It's a means. It's a vehicle. What's that Frederick Laloux quote? Money is it's like the air we breathe. We need it to live, but we don't live to breathe. Right. So when you start getting down to that, that's why I like personal agility. Got a few things coming through. I just want to make sure we've any questions.
Have we got any smack yet? Is anyone talking any smack?
They're asking. They're talking to each other.
Are they?
We need to start having like a queue for questions. I can see them. Kyland McDonald.
Kyla McDonald. I know.
Could be Kyla and McDonald.
She's a personal agility practitioner, Kyla.
Oh, there you go. Awesome. She said, I just introduced the 3 Vs to a team yesterday. Cheryl, for them, that was the most valuable part of our session. Lots of good observation and conversations generated. So that's the big plus to the 3 Vs. Colin said, maybe it's about, it's doing agile. Yep. Colin's also said, indeed, the challenge with value is it that it is someone else's. The challenge with value is it's in someone else's head. It requires. Sorry, guys, my screen's actually quite far away from myself.
All right, we'll go with that. Yeah.
Value equals perceived benefit, usefulness, or importance of something. That's kind of the question, Colin. But I'm going to agree with you a little bit in the fact that value can be perceived benefit. Obviously, please look at my thesis that's published on Business Agility Institution, adaptive strategy and why actually because value. I actually define what customer value is there. Not for debate. Not for debate. It's totally correct. It's academic. No, it's totally up for debate. I'm looking for someone to debunk it. Chris Henk says really important to get people aligned on the value. I think we agree with that. I do what I value, not what others necessarily value. Ooh, subjective valuations. I totally agree. Cheryl, do you agree with subjective value?
I don't know what you mean by subjective value.
So what I value may not be what you value. And
well, do you know what's the value piece for me keeps unfolding like an onion.
I told you it's popular.
And it is popular, and I think there's a really good reason that it's popular, because I think it's something we don't really fully understand how to grasp yet, and I think we throw that word around a lot, trying to create it as something that's quite defined. And the example that I can give, and Kyla, I know Kyla's on the call as well, and she would relate because she went through this program, and we found that the values piece we did in week 2 of the program. And so there's 6 weeks. And in week 2, we did our values piece. So this was, define your values, and the way in which I approach this with the group. And this is a little tool that people may find of value. I don't know, putting value in 3 columns. First column, what are your core values? I'll come to that in a second. Second column, what are your aspirational values? And third column, what are your non-values? So core values, aspirational values, non-values. Now, the way in which I do this, because I bloody love a post-it note, is is I write all the post-it note, all the value, like different words for values, such as freedom, love, family, whatever the word is that you want to, as many words as you can think of, and put them into these 3 columns. And I have the only one that has a cap on it is our core values. You can only have 5 in there. And I just picked the number 5 because it's a way to cap it. But, what are the 5 words that you would put into your core values? What are the things that are values that you wish you had more of? And this is your aspirational values, things that it's not my core value, but I wish I had more of it. I wish I valued that more. And what are the things that I actually acknowledge that I don't value? And we did that exercise in week 2. And so people had to sort of put them in there. And then the idea is that your 5 core values you take with you through the rest of the program, and they're your foundation for everything that you set in terms of your vision. But what we found through this, because every time I run a program, it's always an experiment. What we found,
Cheryl, what's the third one again? Sorry, core values, aspirational values.
Core values, aspirational non-values. So these are the things you do not value. I'll tell you what, that is, for some people, myself included, that was probably one of the most confronting exercises of actually acknowledging the things that others might value that you really just don't. And I would say, if you're ever facilitating this type of conversation around these 3 values, ensure it's a really safe space for people to be honest about that. Otherwise, you won't really get honesty come up. But acknowledging the things that are actually not that important to you is, it can be incredibly liberating. Certainly was for me when I did it with the safety of a coach. We did it one-on-one, and I could acknowledge the things that I really don't value. It allowed me to let go of a whole lot of stuff that really didn't matter to me, and to say it out loud to someone. But it also, this is nice. Just my mum's trying to call me.
Oh, the wonder of life.
I'll call you back, Mum. She's someone I value. But this idea that with your non-values is really letting go of stuff. So what do you really value? What do you want to, and this aspirational is, what do you want to grow into? What are the things that maybe I'm not really strong in, but I want to be more of and value? So the whole part of this piece is around our core values. And the idea was that everyone would define their 5 core values. And throughout the program, everybody sort of shared their values that they created back in week 2. But what we found is through the program, people had a lot of trouble with the words that they'd picked. And they'd picked them in week 2. And by week 3, they'd looked at those words a few times, and all of a sudden they didn't mean the same things that they meant in week 2. So they'd have to change them again. And it was this ongoing process. And even I think by the end of the program, I know I've spoken to multiple people that did the program that have come back saying, I'm still trying to get clarity on what that word means for me and why it's important, and and so I think it's a piece that I think is a lot more slippery and harder to define than we probably give credit for. And I think sometimes it's a huge piece, and I think we would like to be able to put it into a little box and go, cool, you've defined your values, now we can move on and we can build everything off that. But the reality is, I think these values keep shifting and changing, and the more people you bring into a group or an organization, the more they shift as well. So I'm not surprised that there's a whole lot of stuff coming up from people around values, because it's a piece I think we need to do more work on and understand better.
Yeah, I totally agree. So, because we're running out of time already, why we came here? What are the 3 A's of
personal agility?
I forgot I stopped talking. Sorry.
Here it is. I'm gonna put the triangle up again.
Triangle, yeah.
I'm realizing the more I do this that I use the triangle symbol a lot, which
it's all right. It's very human.
Yeah, and 3 is a nice balanced number with a triangle. So the 3 A's are around, and I'll share the 3: anticipate, align, and adapt. And what I often share whenever I'm talking about this complex conversation of personal agility, is this is huge. This is talking about people and how their habits and how they behave and how they think. And I'm not trying for a moment to simplify that stuff into 3 letters and 3 words, but what simplifying this down has done for me and what I've found for other people is it provides some simplistic guidance and framing or constructs that allow us to focus on, like, where do we put our time, where do we put our energy on working on. If we're busy people, we're always working on new things. How do I evaluate and put some energy towards something if I don't have any kind of framing for it? So the 3 A's, the idea is align is around your vision, your values. This is around centering. And I say it from a personal point of view, but as you talked about, Michael, this is key for an organization. If you don't know your why, you could end up with, if you've got groups of people all going in different directions, as an individual, without alignment, that usually results in decision paralysis. We can't move forward because we don't know which direction we want to move. So if we don't really know what's driving us, a great term that Wayne Kingy, who's a fantastic coach here in New Zealand, he was on our program last year, he talks around this pull. A great vision doesn't push you in a direction, it actually pulls you towards it. And so alignment allows us to kind of feel that pull into what's pulling us as an individual. In terms of anticipate, these are, and I often refer to them as our anticipatory practices. These are our habits that allow us to anticipate change before it happens. And while we can't ever predict completely the change that's going to arrive or fully prepare for it, there are things that we can do to actually start to strengthen our ability to respond. And if you take Scrum as an example, and I use Scrum as an example because it's so widely known, the likes of a sprint planning session, the goal of that, it's an anticipatory practice to look at the horizon and go, so this is our week ahead. What have we got coming up? What do we think we can achieve? What things might derail us? What do we need to think about now that might help us in 2, 3, 4 days from now? So it's always that sort of balance between focus on what you need to do right now, but focusing on the horizon that's ahead and scanning that horizon regularly to see if there may be change on the horizon. And this is the piece, in my view, that is often overlooked when it comes to high agility teams. You can have an alignment to a vision and you can adapt really quickly when change happens, but it's the practices in between, the habits that we form so that we're ready when that change occurs, that is really the part that we can strengthen. And that's the part we can have control over. We can't control the things that are going to change, but we can control our practices to prepare us for that. So that anticipate piece is around the practices. And then when we look at the adapt side of it, it's not just something happens, so we react. It's actually looking at how do we consciously react. The change happens and we pause and we take a look and we go, okay, a change has come in. Am I aligned? That aligned piece is really important. What's my vision? How do I change here to keep aligned to that vision? Because all of a sudden this has moved and now I need to reevaluate that. So before we actually adapt, sometimes the decision not to adapt to something is a conscious one. And often for teams that I work with, it's like, you're in the middle of a sprint, a massive request has come in midway through. Do we stop everything we're doing to respond to that? Or do we actually say, no, we're not going to deal with that till next sprint. We're going to continue on this momentum we've got and we'll consider that, when we come into the next sprint. So helping individuals, teams and organizations be really conscious. And then the last piece of adapt, which for me is the most important, is the sustainability. So sustainable agility, which is thankfully becoming a bit more of a buzzword at the moment. The word sprint in itself describes what we're asking of people. High intensity, all of the time, sprint, 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 sprint. I want my people to go fast. We can't maintain that sort of intensity. So how do we build practices in place to allow us to be sustainable? And so this is sort of bringing all these 3A's together. Yeah, that is.
No, I love it. And the align bit is obviously resonating with people online because they're talking about value is subjective. I like Colin's comment, by the way, money equals output, totally agree. But if you're not aligned to some sort of vision personally, organizational wide, how are you ever going to succeed in achieving that goal if you don't know where you're going? So I totally agree. It's a good one. I like that. I'll bring it back a little bit. Align, adapt, anticipate. Can you expand on anticipate a bit more again?
Can I be a bit annoying here?
Go for it.
Can we make the anticipate a capital A?
I did try.
Like, oh gosh, this is probably my personality coming through.
No, do you know why? And for the viewers, by the way, so I have hotkeys on my keyboard. So if I press a button by mistake, it all changes.
That's
so cool. There are certain keys I can't press, which is why I misspell things in the group chat. So sometimes, I need a helper. If you like to work for Agility Matters and want to sit in my garage, in my studio and press my buttons for me, I'd be very happy. I can't pay you, but it'd be enjoyable.
Well, that sounds like such an offer.
Yeah, I think so. So can you expand on the anticipate bit for me? So I love align, the vision, sustainable. I love adapt. Obviously, new data comes in. Do we adapt? Do we not? Is it valuable to adapt? And that resonates with me massively, especially from a personal point of view. But anticipate, I haven't nutted down anticipate. How would you elevator pitch me to anticipate?
Oh, I've just pulled a couple of stickies off the wall that sit under anticipate. I've got two questions that might help shape that a little bit. The first of all, this is gonna.
What is the most important thing to focus on next? Yep.
And
how do you navigate the flow of your work?
Yeah.
Ooh, how do you navigate the flow of your work? Good question.
So when we're looking at align, the two questions I'm focused on is where are you at now? This is your alignment piece. And what's most important to you? So this is around, what's important to me? Where am I at? What's going on? Once we move into that next space of anticipate, we're going, so now you know what's important to you. What's important to focus on next? And that word focus is pretty key. So that's where we would start to look at, I talk about them as focus areas when we're working in a personal space, but you might relate these to epics, for example. So if you imagine all the things you need to do in your life, if you were to group these into themes and create epics for them, what would those be? And if I gave you, for example, the limit of 5, you can have 5 focus areas. What would be the things that you would call, and these might be things like family, work, health. They're different for everyone. And as Kyla will remember, like trying to define those 5 is really unique for everyone as well. Once you group them, you can start to break down all of the things that sit within them, but then you can prioritize like you do with an epic and with stories. What are the top most important things in each of those areas? Because each of those areas need a little bit of love in order for us to have a happy, healthy life. And then the next piece around anticipate is how do you navigate the flow of your work? So when we're looking at, okay, I've broken a whole lot of this stuff down, how do I currently work? And how does that work flow through? And a huge part of what we focus on is around the transparency side of it, and actually observing your work patterns so that you can, and this is where the likes of, anyone that works in or understands Scrum, because it's a good example, that's why that Scrum has all of these different practices within it or ceremonies. A retrospective is there for us to inspect and adapt. And we can use that same practice when it comes to navigating the flow of our work. How do we improve the flow of our work? We can hold ourselves a retrospective so we can evaluate it and we can change it. And so looking at exactly the same way we do with teams, how do we navigate the flow of a team's work? We can do the same on ourselves. What days of the week, for example, are you most is your best environment for high intensity work? Like, what would you say, Michael? Like, which day of the week, if you were to pick a day of the week that you're going to get the most high intensity work done,
Friday.
Which day of the week for you?
Friday.
Boom.
Yep.
And what's your probably lowest intensity day of the week?
Sunday.
Cool. So you're already starting to navigate some of that. You've already probably done a bit of work on understanding those things about yourself. The more we can actually...
From a sustainable point of view. So for those who don't know, Michael had a heart problem about 6-7 years ago. And for someone of this age, I'm not meant to have a heart problem. So sustainability is a massive thing of what I promote, because burnout is real and it causes all kinds of problems. So Sunday's the lowest day for me, by the way, because I forced myself to have a completely chilled out, almost biblical day of rest.
Nice.
And then Friday's massive because y'all don't work Saturdays and I work Saturday. So if no one's available for me, I have to get things done on Friday. So I'm very, very much like smashing out work on Friday to ask any questions. And then, yeah, I mean, even my own team, Tim, you're on the call. Work Saturdays. Stop being lazy. No, if it's not sustainable for someone, don't do it. I'm very big on a 6-day working week. So I don't differentiate. It's because I don't differentiate work and play. It should be all the same thing. I love what I do. It's great.
Yeah.
And I play every day with my kids. I enjoy it. So why not be building the Surge website on a Saturday because I enjoy it, etc.
So it sounds like you are net, and this is I guess to line into your question around anticipate. You're learning what it is that works for you, so you can then navigate that flow of your work and go, Saturdays I am on, and I can, but I know that on Sundays I shouldn't schedule an intense call, or so these little practices that you know about yourself, these are things that a lot of people haven't actually taken the time or the energy to evaluate, and are really valuable for us to understand, so we can actually plan. We create plans based on, I often talk about people energy, knowing your energy levels, so you can actually set yourself up for success rather than set yourself up for just a wild, gnarly week where you're just going to be burnt by the end of it.
This is actually brilliant advice, not just from personal agility, but just from for your teams if you are a leader of some kind. Because I guess I've done this without actually realizing why. And now you're connecting the dots for me, which is quite nice. I always evaluate when a retro should be, or when PI planning should be, or when quarterly planning, big room planning, whatever you want to call it. I base it on like lunar eclipse. No, I don't. But I base it on basically the cycles of their emotions, and I kind of look at that and go, right, everyone is way more energized. Yeah, I am doing that. It's quite interesting now you pointed that out. Yeah, that's just a really good thing for leaders to look at. You made me think there, Cheryl, because I haven't done that deliberately. I've just kind of just done it thinking that, everyone's in on Tuesday and they're all happy on Tuesday. We should run things that are,
So may I share a quick thought on that? Is the reason you might have been able to do that for your team is because you've done it for yourself. And
true.
this is what I keep coming back to, is if you do this work on yourself, you can show up in a different capacity for your team, because you see things in a different light and you can empathize with people in a different light. And this is why I can't emphasize enough how valuable, not only is it valuable for the way that you live your life and avoiding burnout, as you mentioned, but you can show up in a different way, that you see things in a different way, because you're doing that work on yourself. You're living these values and this way of working. So if things aren't, if you're finding things tough, you're probably more likely to actually understand why a team's finding it tough, because you go, you know what, when I was working on this part of it myself, I found that tough too. I get that. Hey, here's some ways that I worked through that. So you've got real experiences to draw on, rather than the book tells me that you should be doing this right now, and I don't really get why you're not doing it, because you should be. It's a way more human way to come in at it.
I think that the difference between human-centered design, empathy, versus a 2-day course where you're suddenly a leader and you think you can just point out the Scrum guide or the Safe guide or something else. There is a vast difference of knowledge, and I think empathy is a huge way to go on that. I had a question. What was it? It was a cool question. It'll come back to me. But no, I totally agree with the empathy. That's what it was. What you're saying resonates with me. Everyone online, can you please tell me if it's resonating with you? Because you've all gone quiet. There's 19 of you and none of you are talking, right? But let me know if it's resonating with you, right?
They're all drunk. I
Yeah,
had lots of beers and it's Friday night. And
this is why I love Friday night, Cheryl, because people come on and they're like really chatty at the start and
This
they're
is
like
why
4
I'm
glasses
like,
in.
there's no heckling. Where is the
I know, right? I know. It all being nice to you, Cheryl.
thanks,
No,
guys.
so I can imagine a year ago or a year and 3 weeks ago, people not disagreeing with you, but going, wishy-washy nonsense, because there is a borderline here. And I won't get into it with today. I'd love to get you back on the difference between life coach and coach, right? Because there's a borderline there and you're kind of wavering in that area, right? But why I say that is because they would have said to you wishy-washy last year in 3 weeks. But have you seen a pickup of this since COVID? I have a reason for this, ask this question, but have you seen any pickup?
Pick up on what specifically in the likes of personal agility?
In personal agility and in the sense of understanding your flow during the week and the month, around that area.
Yeah.
I have a hypothesis. That's the reason why I'm asking the question. Have you seen a pickup on it?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Oh, now you've already guided my answer because you told
I have, sorry.
I
was trying not to. I was trying to be quiet.
I'll try best to ignore that and answer it.
We'll edit that out.
Yeah, totally. And the part that probably I've observed the most is this. It's actually something that I've been really trying to encourage up until COVID hit, which is this awareness that we are one person. You know, when we talk about our work life and our home life, we talk about it as if they're two different people. And usually a lot of the internal struggle that I deal with when I'm working with coaches one-on-one is this conflict of those two people. You know, I come to work and I've got to be this person, but out of work I'm actually this person, and I don't really know how to relate to my team. And this idea that we are two people, and it creates a huge amount of conflict for our leaders. So I empathize with anyone in a leadership role who feels that, because it's really uncomfortable. What interests, so I've been for years trying to encourage people to show up as the same person in both. It's the reason that right now there's a bed and a snowboard behind me, because my office has been taken over by the spare room. And I went, I could put up a screen right now to make it look really professional, but the reality is my office has been taken over as a spare room right now, and that's my reality, and that's my, so I try best I can to be real. And recognize that my work life is my home life. But what COVID has done is really bring a lot of that really fast forward to the front. All of a sudden you've got people dialing in a professional context with their kids running behind them and their wife going, are you having dinner now? Or and they go, I'm on a call at the moment. Like, all of a sudden it's brought together these two worlds, which is brilliant from that sense. Yeah. But one of the biggest challenges I've heard from people is I can no longer differentiate between the two, and it's taking control of my life, and I no longer have that conscious split between them. And that's really causing challenges for people of going, I don't know, I can't turn off. I'm, because my work is my home and I work from my office, which is in my home. And I didn't realize until COVID hit that, because I've been doing this for many years, working for myself within my own confines of my home, or my office has been my home. So I've realized that I've developed all these ways in which I can handle that. I didn't realize till COVID hit that many people don't have the tools to do that. Yeah. And that's been probably one of the biggest challenges for people that I've seen around their own agility. It's been this overload and this inability to disconnect from work, and just
stress has gone through the roof, hasn't it?
Yeah, and just fully be home because you're home, and fully be at work when you're at work. This world where we're mashing them together, but we haven't really given people the guidance or support of how to handle that.
And I'm glad you say that, because I was working with Ministry of Social Development, which, for those who are not in New Zealand, that's our social welfare ministry, I guess you would call it overseas. And that was the first thing we did. All the coaches came together and said, hey, yo, what's up? I said, hey, let's check in people who live alone. And we had coaches who lived alone, you know, and we may clash over what our strategy was. But at the end of the day, it was like, hey, how can I help? How are you? And I thought that was going on everywhere until I went to my next client, and people were having like massive stress because that work life was just getting in the way, and people were just not understanding like it's okay. I'll give you a secret, Cheryl. I thought I was very authentic. I hate that word, but I thought I was very authentic. It wasn't till I was on a call and my baby crawled in, and I started playing with my baby. And after my wife came and got the baby away, the team were like, "Wow, talk about flip of a coin, Michael." I was like, well, "What do you mean?" And they were like, "Well, I just saw Michael the dad and not Michael the evil agile coach person." And I was like, and I realized, yeah, I'm very like methodical, very I listen a lot. I normally calmly spoken. But with my cutie woody babies here, I'm just Mikey the daddy. And so I changed my name to Mikey because people who know me personally call me Mikey.
I thought you were going to say you change it to Mikey the daddy.
No, no. I
That'd
changed.
be so good.
And then I realized that people who know me call me Mikey. People who don't know me call me Michael or Mike. So I changed my just one little thing. I changed my name on Zoom to say Mikey, and it's like it just since COVID it all went, you know. And the other thing I noticed about COVID as well, I don't know if you know, is people their work from home days, because here in New Zealand we've had hardly any lockdowns, so we've been backwards and forwards. But their work from home days, they've taken the work from home days that are, I guess, the most relaxing day, so they can get their emails done, their preparation done, everything else. So they're already managing their flow better than they ever have done because of work from home. And I'm loving that.
Yeah.
I'm loving that. So I'm really happy. And by the way, I put the link to your course on the comments. Is that?
Yeah, I also wanted to say, if it's of value, I shared a little slide the other week, I don't know when, but and it had the 3 A's and it has the 6 questions. So there's 2 questions for each A that I sort of ask, which I can share as well, because I guess my hope in creating this language for personal agility is that it helps others to take it on and work out what it means for them and use it in whatever way works for them. And I find certainly for coaches, having, for example, 6 questions that you can pose to yourself, to your team, to your leaders, can be quite helpful guidance of which way to take it without, you don't have to fully grasp the whole concept in order to ask a question. But certainly, like this is where I offer the opportunity for people if they want to go deeper with this knowledge. And that's what, I got to do with Kyla last year, and Wayne and some other cool humans, is actually starting to create a practice and a discipline and a skill set. And I talk about the 6 skills of personal agility, because my belief is that like these are skills that we can learn. These are not things that you've either got it or you don't. This is, in my view, this is a muscle we all have. And if we know how to strengthen that muscle, we can all get better at it. And, I refuse to believe that some people are good at agility and some aren't. I think, given the right environment and given the right support, anyone can develop this in themselves, but it helps if we know what types of things we need to work on. So that's sort of the program that I'm running, which, as a little side note, I hope it's okay for me to share this.
Oh, 100%. The last question is basically, how do people reach you?
Yeah, and I guess, and I mean this with genuineness, that I create this to help others be able to take it on board and share it beyond. So I really only want to encourage people who this really resonates with, who want some sort of structure and content to take and use, that if that's something that you're looking for, this is what I'm teaching at the moment. And I'm not I don't want to share something that's not of value to people. So if this sounds of value, we've got in just under 3 weeks, so 2.5 weeks, we kick off our next program. And I've got a few spaces left. I kind of, the size of my programs depend on whoever applies, and I roll with whoever applies. Whoever comes are the right people to come, as they say in the unconference rules. So if this sounds like something that's of value, and if you are keen, because it's an 8-week program and it's 4 hours a week, which I totally get for some people that they have capacity and some don't. If this sounds like something that you want to get on board with, then get in touch. I've got a few spaces. It's one of those programs that it will possibly change the way you kind of look at the world. So it's not a light, you're not just coming to get a certification. I'm going to make you check yourself. So if you're up for that, then cool. If you're not, then this might not be the right thing for you. So I'm pretty pumped to kick off the next iteration. And I'm also running a version. So I'm running a version of it, like a public version of it, so people can apply in. I'm also in conjunction to it running a corporate version. So I've got the first, going to be running it with an organization for the first time. So we've got 12 leaders that are coming on board as one organization. We're looking at how we can develop agility from the leaders first in terms of their own personal agility. It's super, super exciting. I just got off a call today with a couple of the coaches at the organization who are just pumped at the idea of like bringing this stuff in at the leadership level around agility to see how we scale this stuff outwards. And so those are a couple of experiments that I'm sort of running. And my hope is I can keep documenting and sharing this stuff so I can teach what kind of comes up from it.
Love it. And is that the right website, by the way?
That's the one. Ministry of People. More people.
Yeah, do you know there's actually a Ministry of People, by the way?
What's that?
There's actually a Ministry of People. I searched for it on Google and it comes up with the ministry. I was like, do you own the ministry? No, keep searching. Oh, there it is, Cheryl.
Yeah, exactly. Ministry of People.
Ministryofpeople.co. So yeah, guys, grab in there. And can they find you on LinkedIn as well? Are you a LinkedIn fan?
Of course. And I've as you might know, Mike, I've been experimenting with LinkedIn Live this week.
Yeah, I'm very jealous. I applied. I haven't been accepted yet.
I don't know how I got in, I'll be honest. I don't really know how that happened.
I'm jealous. I love it. And I've been watching your live streams as well.
I reckon I might get myself banned.
Why?
Because I'm just hitting it once a day. I'm turning the mic on. I'm bringing people on board. I don't know if they're going to go over exerting yourself on there, but LinkedIn.
Exactly what I want to do as well. I wanted to basically just have my morning. So I want to call it like morning thoughts of Mike. Because I have these random thoughts every morning. Because I wake up.
Did you tell LinkedIn this?
LinkedIn doesn't reply to me. Like LinkedIn.
Okay. You need to go straight to Jeff.
I think so. It's the only way it's gonna work. But we're on YouTube Live, so YouTube Live's great. Any questions online, people, before we start wrapping this up? Because I'm gonna do my rapid fire questions now because I have a few left. So, done that one. All right. What problem do you solve?
Burnout.
What problem do you solve?
Burnout.
Oh, burnout. I thought you said go now. Sorry. Burnout.
Burnout.
I don't sleep, guys. I have a baby. Cheryl understands.
Burnout. That's
burnout.
That's what I solve.
I love it. I could have done with you 6 years ago. How do we implement it? What's like a boom, boom, boom? This is roughly what it is.
You ask yourself those 6 questions. And like I said, I'll share those 6 questions. You start there. And if you want to go further, then holler at me and come and join our program.
molepeople.co. What's the benefit to leaders? Clarify question. What's the benefit to leaders of their people having personal agility?
Can I flip it to what's the benefit of the leaders? Because The reason I say that is I think there's lots of leaders out there who lead agile teams that have never worked in an agile team before. So I actually don't. And again, I empathize with them. They don't know what it feels like to be in a retrospective. They don't know what it's like to set sprint goals. They've never done it because they've never been in an agile team.
Yep.
And so doing this stuff for yourself allows you to understand what it is you're asking of your teams. If you're fortunate to be a leader in an organization where you have an agile coach yourself for your leadership team, brilliant. You don't need this. You're probably good. But if you are a leader of an agile team and you haven't had the chance to experience all the things that your team experiences, this is where it seems so important that we give our leaders the opportunity to try it for themselves.
Love it. And my battery on my camera's run out.
You've got your blank screen. Do you want me to take over from here?
There you go. You take over. So the next one is I'll answer the other question as well, though, because I mentioned this, right? So I'm a leader, I'm a CEPO, and I'm going to send
Chief Executive People Officer.
Chief People Officer, yes. And I'm going to send 50 people on your course to get personal agility.
Yeah.
But what am I going to tell the CFO?
Yeah.
What am I going to get?
Yeah, cool. This is actually a conversation I've had this week. So this comes back to what's the problem that exists in your organization that you think this might solve? And this will be different, obviously, for every organization. But there's usually, when people come to me and say, can you help us by developing our people agility, there's usually a reason. The most common reason is that I hear is our people are resistant to change. And we need them to be more open to change. So there is no, in my view, no better way to focus on people's response to change than developing their own personal view on change. And again, you can give them tools such as a stand-up or a retrospective and these practices as a team that they can do. But if they don't get why this stuff is important on a personal level, that CFO, that CHRO or your Chief People Officer will continually be trying to push something on them. So helping them understand this stuff from a personal level, from what I'm seeing and now what I'm testing by introducing this into organizations is that we will see a rapid shift in people's response to change. What that looks like for each organization will be unique, though, and that's something that I'm working at the moment with different organizations to define. What does it look like to have an organization that and people that are the opposite of resistance to change, that they're welcoming change? What does that look like? Then you can create a version of this is our vision. We can align to this, and now we can create the practices in place for people to start moving towards. So to come back to that again, what's the problem that you have that you think personal agility will solve? Because usually by the time your CHRO or your Chief People Officer and your CFO are getting involved, they already know what they think the problem is, defining that with them, and what would it look like to solve it. That's usually what we're working on, and it's usually around a willingness and an openness to change.
Yeah, and I'm going to add to that for you. So obviously I'm an ex-accountant, if you know that, but I'm a boring old ex-accountant. Attrition rate should decline. You should have IP should be actually retained in the organization. Less burnout would mean less cost to HR, less complaints, less in-house fighting, which would increase productivity, which would therefore increase innovation because of creativity. So I would go a little bit further. I think there's a lot of KPIs that you could actually help with that I'm connecting in my head. And a CFO would love you because I think he would increase his triple bottom line because of it.
So I would. I've got. Do we have time to just jam on that?
Of course we can. Of course we can.
You're absolutely right that a CFO would love that. That would possibly tick the boxes to get the budget and the funding to move ahead with it. but I don't really think that addresses the problem. And my guess would be that those things we might be able to shift them, but do they really help us to achieve what we're aiming to achieve? And those I'm not saying for a minute that they're not important metrics, but they're very likely important metrics to a CFO that's looking at things from a predictable standpoint, and from a view that if we can just increase these, then we're doing well. But the reality is we could increase
100%.
our attrition, we could increase these, but we still notice that people are resistant to change, and they're not, for whatever things it is. So I think there's still a piece there. If those things are still really important to our CFO, which makes sense because we need to be able to translate things from a little bit more of a black and white point of view, I would encourage to work with the CFO to help that CFO be involved in the conversation around what does it look like for us to have a culture and a group of people that are really open to change, because that's really the outcome. What we might set are some goals around attrition and that sort of thing, but those measures on their own, I don't know that we should stand on those as...
They're lag factors. I would totally agree, they're lag factors. But they're lag factors that the board still look at. Now, until we infiltrate the board and start looking at these, they're still going to look at quarterly reports at these figures. And the problem I have with these figures is the same you have the problem with these. They're lag figures. They don't represent all the good work that's going on. Things could be 3 years down the chain. But if you have a board that sit in front of their quarterly report and they see the words, a reduction in CapEx spend because we have pivoted on new information because our teams are changing more fluidly to the customer. They ignored all of that, and all they saw was reduction in CapEx. Awesome. So the lag factors don't matter, but they are very good sales pitches to board members and especially CFOs. And I empathize with my CFOs. That's where I was heading. My next job was CFO. And that's all I cared about. I was a management accountant. I was fully bought into the management accounting idea. But even in our ACCA, our child accountancy, we always talked about how, this is just the lag factor. We know this is lag factor. We know what we are impacting here could have an impact 18 months later, but we need to limit that impact. And this is why I always tell people on this show, if you want to make a CFO happy, reduce his risk by talking in terms of quarters or months or 2 weeks or a day, because he or she will love you, or they will love you for it.
And there's also a piece here that feels like it comes back to the old V word that we talked about earlier around what is the company value? Because if if our CFO is driving our decisions around what we prioritize, there's a high chance that the things that we say as a company we value maybe not all fully represented at the table when we talk about this stuff. And that's why it's so, in my view, so important that our CFO, our CPO or CHRO, that they have equal weighting in the conversation, because those metrics around the financials are incredibly important for us to continue to be an economic functioning organization. But we also recognize the fact that our biggest outgoing are our people, and we need to equally have representation around what are our values as a company, because those things that we value should also be part of what it is we call success. And so I think I completely agree. It's like, how do we bring those key people together to come together and define what is the type of environment we're trying to create, in terms of, if we say our problem is people are resistant to change, what does it look like? How do we reward that? And how do we encourage that sort of behavior? And it's bringing together all of those brilliant people. And our CFO is absolutely critical to that if we're going to survive as an organization. But those metrics coming together with the values of the organization around what is, why do we exist? What is it that we're about?
I agree. And it's why I love C-suite in general, actually, because they're the perfect cross-functional team. Just start working as a team. I remember I was in an Auckland client once, and it was a good conversation. So the CPO, the Chief People Officer, she was saying things like, our people are unhappy and they're leaving, and we want to build a better culture that means that they're happy at work, and we can, it's all about happiness, right? And I got what she was saying. And the CFO was another lady, really intelligent lady, but she goes, but you want $3 million for a transformation and you have no functional benefits. I don't understand.
Yep.
I translated that to say, how much does it cost to train somebody? And they were like, oh, 42,000. I said, great. Your turnover of staff is costing you $42,000 per person who's leaving, plus the loss of productivity of the onboarding cost, which is basically peer-to-peer section, peer-to-peer learning, right? And see if I was like, yep, totally. If we were to lower attrition rate and actually have less people leaving, you would save 4 or 5 million over 3 years, I think it was. And then she was like, yeah, perfect, excellent. So I think I'm not saying that it's just about the stats. I fully agree with the values and where we're going. What the problem is we're actually solving, it's never going to be measured in small little metrics, and you can always adjust it. But I'm very big on making my old CFOs happy, because
totally. And I don't want to I don't want to say that values are different to stats. I'm saying
no.
Perhaps we could look at how we can create our statistics to line into our values.
Bingo. Yeah.
And that's where bringing those people, those right people together to sort of try and map that out it is really key, and I think it's becoming more and more important as people start to understand things about the cost of. I once mapped out, once someone decides that they're leaving, or even that they have that first thought of, I don't know if this is the right place for me. The cost to an organization once that engagement level drops, and then the time it takes for the next person to start, there's a huge cost there. 100%.
Well, isn't it Zappos that pays someone $1,000 to leave? Is it Zappos? Some company says, if you want to leave, we'll pay you $1,000 to leave on the spot. No. And we'll pay out your leave. So basically, they'll give you your 4 weeks' pay plus $1,000 to say goodbye. Which 5,000.
That is such a great example of your values matching up. Because in that example, if they measured their attrition rate on that, that'd be screwed, because there's all these people potentially are leaving. But if you value people's growth and development, that you believe that a great employee will come back to your organization, then all of a sudden how many people leave may no longer be a really key statistic. What might be more important is, how did they rate their offboarding experience, for example, or how did they rate their so that's where I think if you can match your metrics with your values as an organization. And again, this is where I completely agree, your CFOs, they are critical to they understand the metrics of this. But if we can help them work together with the people that know people best, we can actually work together to create some really awesome metrics that are specific to our organization and the things that we value.
What is our competitive advantage, and how do we actually win in this market? I totally agree. I love that.
And not just win in terms of our customer base, but win in terms of the people that we get into our team. Because the people you get into your team are the key to the success of your company. It's not the other way around. It's not like, right, we've got a successful thing we're selling, we just need people to come in and make it happen. We're more and more realizing that actually when it comes to creativity and innovation, we need the people to come in, and then we can be successful.
They are the asset.
So all of a sudden, again, this is where I love, if we can bring our people and our statistical people, together to create this stuff together. I think we can see something pretty unique and successful for.
I agree. A very quick story, because I know we are over time, and you've got a baby. I'll make sure you get back to. Is it her or him?
Him. His name is Rio.
Oh, hi Rio for tomorrow, or hi Rio in 18 years' time when you look at this live stream and go.
Yeah, hopefully tomorrow. Wow. Hopefully not tonight. Hopefully he's not waking up again tonight.
It's 6 months. 6 months. 6 months is normally okay. It's when they hit 10 months. Sorry.
Oh no! Don't tell me 10
months. They have that weird. So for the last 5 weeks, I've been woken up at 10:30 on the dot, 3:30 on the dot, and 5:30 on the dot.
Ah, interesting.
Horrible. It's like she knows the time.
Accuracy, really, yeah, exactly. It's quite impressive.
Yeah, and then the problem is you get used to it, so you start adapting yourself. You start waking up ahead of time, waiting.
Yeah.
The story I was going to tell. I was in a pub once. It was a head of HR, and this is a people-centered company, which is quite interesting. The company actually in Wellington. And I think he's a management accountant. Both friends of mine, two different companies. I told that Zappos story to them. Both were like, wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. I was like, oh, hang on a minute. Why are you both saying this is amazing? And this is what I love about when you look at polar management, right? Two spectrums of an answer. So why do you both find this amazing? Why do you find this amazing? And they were like, oh, because you're thinking of the employee first. It's obviously people-centric. You know, the offloading experience must be amazing. People have security, so they're not ever worried. All these positive things, right? I said, I love it. Good answer. Why do you find this great? I saved money. I was like, yeah, no, you have. You have. And then they argue for 20 minutes about which one was more important. It didn't matter because the KPI would be the KPI that you would have agreed upon. The solution, how you're rewarded, is based on your own mindset. So the financial person's like, I'm saving money because the productivity loss over the last 9 months of them finding a job would be X, and you know, left brain thinkers, right? And then the right brain thinkers will be going, well, we've made everyone like happier, and there's no conflict. There's no because you know when you're upset in work, you start causing, you know, negative energy and vibes. And you know, as a coach, Cheryl, you can pick out who's leaving. You can just pick them out. Like, you're looking for a job. You're looking for a job. You found a job. You're so happy. It's obvious. So, but I love it. I love it, and that's why I said to you, I really enjoy that. Bring those together. They should be a team. They should have their own. Who mentioned that? Colin. So Colin Hooper said CFOs and CPOs also need to be coached into thinking more in agile ways and mindset shift from a historical hierarchy mindset to an agile network mindset. Policy and practices need to change. Totally agree.
Why do you think, Mikey, I'm going to call you Mikey now.
Love it. Go for it.
Why do you think that they are not being coached? I'm going to ask that question on behalf of Colin.
Look, I know almost every single C-suite in New Zealand is offered coaching. I shouldn't say that absolutely. I don't absolutely know that, but I would say the majority of people were offered coaching. Why don't they take it? Two reasons. One, imposter syndrome that you spoke about earlier on, in the fact that I'm meant to know all the answers and I look weak for having a coach, right? So I'm extrapolating what you said earlier on and overlaying it in that way. And that's a very valid fear. I mean, for instance, even in my line of work, if I say I don't know, people go, oh, well, he's obviously shit, you know? And it's like, well, no, I just don't know. Do you want me to go find out for you? So imposter syndrome, they always worry and they're always looking for the next contract, or sorry, the next role. And the second one, I think, is, I'll be quite blunt, I guess, easy way.
Do it.
A lot of coaches are not good enough to coach someone who spent 25 years grappling up the chain, who knows their industry full and through, who's read every single book under the sun. I've met people, I read a book a week. It's not like amazing, but I read a book a week. Some of the people I've met, they've read like, because they're older than me, they've read like 10, 20 times more books than I have. They've read all this, they've seen it all, they've tried it all. And a lot of coaches, they're just not good enough. Now, I agree that anyone, my child can coach me. And my 8-year-old does coach me in some weird ways. But I think executive coaching is taking a back seat to agile coaching, enterprise coaching, lean coaching. And we're kind of stepping on their toes a little bit. A proper executive coach, someone like yourself, Cheryl, somebody who's actually got the experience talking to execs on their level and understanding and empathizing where they come from, they're quite rare. And that's my answer in a very long-winded way. Can a coach who's worked with teams work at the C-suite level? Of course you can. Creating a team. The one-on-one coaching, though, I don't think they take seriously unless you have a valid experience and show results. And then it depends on the person, right? So I don't pretend to be a psychologist. I may have read all the books, but I'm not a psychologist. I am not a Dr. Michael.
Have you read all the books?
I've read all the books of psychology. Of course I have.
Cool.
No, I love
Bad.
psychology, right? So I wanted to do a master's in psychology, but Massey University turned me down. Apparently, my master's of business is not good enough to go into master's in psychology. So, oh well. But I love doing master's psychology because I love psychology. But as what I am, I'm not a psychologist, so I try and steer away from those conversations. I'm also not very good with people, and this is my limitations. I'm not good with people that just want to talk. That's not. I'm a high performance coach. If you want to talk to somebody and you want to vent your aggression, and I'll give you a little bit. But if you want to vent your aggression and just complain to me, not take any action to move forward, I'm not the coach for you. But there are coaches like that, and I think that's probably. This is a very long-winded answer. That's probably where I probably sit on why that is.
Yeah. Fair enough.
What about you? Why do you think they don't get coached? Or coached enough? Because plenty do. Plenty do.
I actually had a conversation this morning with a guy named John, who we talked about how agility, this concept of exposing the fact that things are uncertain, is really confronting for people. And it was a really, it was quite a big revelation, I think, last night when I first talked to him about it. I talked to him again this morning about it once I'd unpacked it. And it came from a woman, Carolina, who's based in Korea. She talked about how she found when she started to learn more about Agile and use these Agile ways of working, her anxiety started to increase. And as we started to unpack this, it was sort of this realization that what we're introducing to these leaders is the concept that nothing is certain, and that we're leaning into this fast changing world, and it's incredibly unpredictable. And so we're trying to create practices and tools to help us respond to it. But before you can even take those on, you've got to acknowledge the fact that it's really uncertain. And you've got to sort of lean into that rather than go, you know what, I don't want to lean into it. I want to create a plan. And if I create I'm really good at creating really good plans.
I like my bubble. Leave me alone, Cheryl.
Yeah, I got my plan. And I've done this for, like you said, 10, 20, 30, 40 years. I know how to run a good plan. Don't you get in the way of my plan. Don't come and tell me that things are unpredictable, because I'm really good at managing unpredictability. And things are changing. The world is changing, and what the concepts around Agile, as I see, are there to do is to actually help us, once we accept that this stuff is changing quickly, we're coming up with ways we can respond to it. And for a lot of the leaders that I've come across, that there's resistance for coaching, certainly resistance to Agile and approaches, is something around this idea of, I don't want to acknowledge the uncertainty, and I certainly don't want to acknowledge that I don't know how to deal with it. And I certainly don't want you, Agile coach, to come in and tell me how I've now got to run things when I've been running them this way for this many years. So not only are you trying to tell me that I've got to run things differently, but you're telling me I've got no certainty with this. And it's that's my take on certainly my empathizing.
A natural fear response, right? A natural fear response for not being in control.
This is uncomfortable stuff. And I personally have done a huge amount of work on myself and learning to respond to change. And I have to remember, when I go into work with these leaders, some of them, have been at the same organization for 20, 30 years. They may have not have done that level of work. And the fact that someone's coming and telling them that they need to get better at responding to change, when they are supposed to be the ones telling others how to deal with it, when they haven't done it, it's very, very confronting. And I can, again, I can empathize. The more I'm seeing this, the more there is only really, and this might be quite a controversial statement,
It's all
there
right.
is
Agility matters is very controversial. Don't worry.
there is opportunities and there is work for
Oh,
people
100%.
that are willing to acknowledge that, and the opportunities for those that aren't are decreasing very, very fast.
Well, look at the IAG study so it went out last year, study over IAG's transformation, and they reduced FTE by 30%, which is the gold standard for what McKinsey and PwC will promote. We can sack 30% of your staff. I hate that. I hate that so much, but it happens. But the other one that no one seems to look at is they removed 86% of their leadership.
I met
Now,
with the IAG coaches in Amsterdam about a year
really?
ago. Yeah, and
Nice. That case study they did is just like, for me, talking to leaders, I say that case study and there's this blind sweat of like, well, why?
I
It's
think
like, well,
when I spoke to them, they had about I believe their number was about 200 coaches
wow.
in their organisation.
Wow.
So that gives you an idea of the scale of change in terms of having the right form of
Yeah.
leadership to be able to encourage this stuff.
200.
And yeah, 200 coaches, and that was a year ago. It was September of 2019, so a year and a half ago now. So that, like, I guess that's sort of where I'm sort of leveling out with this stuff is, for these leaders who haven't learnt the skills of coaching, who don't really understand what this agile stuff is, who are just trying to get on and get their jobs done. This stuff is confronting, it's uncomfortable, and it's scary.
But it's coming.
It's coming, and that's
it's already here. Here in little old New Zealand. So for those of you, I know we have Russia, Germany, America normally on the show. So I'll see you guys tomorrow for the comments. Like, you guys are already here. You're already telling me, like, how is New Zealand getting away with this? It's like, well, we're a little island somewhere else. We can get away with globalization.
No. Oh, to our credit, there's a huge number of things that we are doing that is, from my view, we are.
I totally agree. I meant as in we are able to.
Don't you take down New Zealand? New Zealand is leading this.
see how tribal it becomes when like you even mention it's like anyway. No, I meant New Zealand companies have been able to get away with the globalization movement due to the barriers to entry into the New Zealand market, right? That's diminished so rapidly that most of our budgets of marketing now go to Facebook, Google, and the likes. Most of our financial institutions are overseas. There's no barrier to entry. Consumer goods are coming from China, Japan, Korea, cars. So we're doing very well in certain segments. But our companies that are here who think that they are rock solid, you're not. And you know you're not. Deep down, you know you're not. Deep down, you know that there are companies adapting faster to you overseas. And unless you put your number 8 wire together,
but isn't this the idea, is that no company is rock solid?
Oh yeah, no. But some people think they are. Like,
well, I guess that's probably maybe I didn't quite share that right. That's my sort of view, is that no one is rock solid in this environment that we're in. And
but someone could be adapting faster than you, and next minute they're here.
Yeah.
And that's my problem. I have 2 book recommendations, by the way. Why am I using next minute? Wow, 2009 much.
You say next minute.
I said next minute, yeah.
Next minute.
Do you remember that, next minute?
Yeah.
These 2 books here, if you're a leader, have read these 2 books. The Fourth Revolution by Klaus Schwab. Brilliant book. Actually, my old boss gave me that book, Bex. Thanks, Bex, because that changed my way of thinking. He's actually on the panel now of the big group that's taken advantage of COVID. He's with Prince Charles.
Just capitalized on.
There you go, capitalized.
Yeah.
So what they're doing, him and Prince Charles and some big bankers are looking at how do we paradigm shift the entirety of our political structure globally, because this depression is quite bad. And that's a really good book. It lets you know that it's already here. Fourth Revolution is not coming. It's here. It's just accelerating faster than we can even think. The second one, actually, I really recommend to leaders. It's a bit of a funny book. It's written by a communist guy, but it's a very funny book. It's called The Bullshit Jobs. And he basically talks about how since the World Wars, how we've created bullshit jobs that have no value. And as coaches, we're also looking for value, right? Like, how do we align to value? How do we remove waste, but realign to more value, etc. He basically talks about how like 90% of our jobs are all bullshit. Brilliant book, both recommend to read, because you read them together, you realize that we've already gone past this. Just we haven't caught up, and that's the reason why people are getting rid of 30% of their staff, because they can. The jobs are no longer producing value. It's not the transformations, and this is my belief, Cheryl. It's not the transformation that reduces the FTE count. They just need an excuse to lower the FTE count. And I've looked at a few of these studies now, and I've gone, I don't think that would have actually increased productivity enough to lower 30% FTE, but he still did it. It's interesting.
What do you base that thought on? That like why are you calling bullshit on that?
I'm calling bullshit on it because to get through 30% of your FTE, if they were valuable, this is my caveat. If they were valuable, producing value like all the others, right? To get rid of 30% of your FTE, because of the decrease in scalable productivity, you'd have to increase your productivity more than the figures they're actually showing from transformations. Most transformations are only showing like a 30 to 40% productivity gain, and that's reducing it by 30% FTE. The numbers don't match.
But you're basing that on the fact that people are working jobs that are based on the value that they bring rather than the job description they have to do, right? Because
100%, yeah.
That's certainly in my experiences. We put people in boxes when we call them job descriptions. And so it's not about how much value they bring. Often it's about that they do their job that they're asked to do. And if we can automate that job, then we get rid of that job description, which often means we get rid of the person, because we haven't usually spent the time understanding the value that that individual brings. We just no longer see a need for that role. So therefore the person goes. If they're a forward-thinking organization who go, oh, these people are really great, they're already embedded in our culture, they're great people, we'll find ways that we can they can bring value to the other parts of the organization, then great.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of organizations will go, we can automate 30% of what we do. And automating 30% of what you do is not an unachievable goal, in my view, in terms of, especially if you're working with an organization that hasn't done any work around automation. Automating 30% of what you do is very possible.
He says 90.
Yeah, exactly. So I feel like 30% of your workforce, if you don't see them as value contributors, you simply see them as job doers, then you can easily get rid of 30% of your people. But if you view people as value bringers, then you could move them to different parts. So I don't know. I think
we're talking the same thing.
Yeah.
We are talking the same thing. So if you saw them as value creators and you align them to value, you probably wouldn't get rid of 30% of your staff, because you'd be like, wow, look how much more value we can create. But if you see them as units, ones and zeros, that those titles are no longer required because we're now agile, or we're now lean, or we're now Six Sigma, or we're now safe, or enter anything you want to. You're just using this opportunity to decrease your FTE. Now, I learned this in my MBA. I was very shocked when you're in the finance class, and you're just like, right.
The fact you're calling them FTEs is probably a sign of, because you're talking about people, right?
Correct. People with lives and families. And
why do we call them FTEs then? I mean, I know what that stands for, but we're talking about people, right?
Well,
I mean, you could
officially no.
You could call them resources is also another way to say FTE.
Yeah, so resources I hate. I don't mind FTE.
FTE is like FTE resource.
So the reason why I don't mind FTE is because it lets me know how many full-time positions the company needs to run.
Yeah, but we're still not working on value here.
No, we're not. But if you had 5,000 FTE, you may have 10,000 people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I don't mind FTE. I hate resources. I hate human resources. I find the whole thing barbaric.
I still think FTE is quite clinical and talking about FTE or like, because you're talking about a capacity of a person.
Correct.
But it's still a person, and it's one person. And I guess it always challenges me when people go, so I've got a 0.5 of a person here, I've got a 0.3 of a like, it's, as you know, context switching is like the worst thing to think you can split a person into
I can't stand
10
that.
points.
Yeah.
Like and so FTE is basically, I've got a 10 out of 10, like I've got 1.0 of them, or no, I've got 0.5. I've got like, it's just in my experiences.
It reminds me of the 1920s when you used to think you own people.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and you own all of them, right? I own all of you, all of your life.
Yeah, well, that's I find that I've had a very small, like 3 months here, 3 months there, but basically I've never had a permanent job, Cheryl. No one can hold me down.
You're an independent woman.
I'm an independent man. But I find it very strange because if I
You've never been an FTE.
I've never been FTE, no. No. I mean, apart from some small pinpoints here and there, but because I couldn't do a contract for some reason.
So do you ever find that hard then to relate to people that are?
Oh, 100%. 100%. I find it it's a real struggle for me to actually really empathize with someone who's been in a job 20 years, the same job and in the same company. And a lot of the youth today, I'll bring myself in with you guys. But
are you putting me in the youth and you're out of the youth? Is that what you're saying?
Probably. Hang on.
You think? Oh, okay. All right.
Are you younger than me, or am
I would say I'm probably older than you, but that's cool. I'll take it. I'll be part of the youth.
Yeah.
I got a buttoned up shirt.
Yeah, you're cool. No, but when you think about it, this generation, especially Generation Z, they don't want permanent jobs. They don't want to be in somewhere. They want to have a cool mission over here, a cool mission over there. And I really dig that. That's basically where I've been in my entire life. Oh, that looks cool. Shiny thing. Go do that.
Yeah.
So I do find it hard to empathize with people because I'm in my head. Very, very quick story. I was working at an electronics company up in Auckland. It was back in my BA's day. And the CFO said to me, Michael, I need you to get rid of 70 people. I was like, oh, okay, why?
You're a BA and you're being asked to get rid of 70 people.
Yep.
And it's a flag. Yep. Sorry, carry on.
And no, because I was doing some automation stuff. Just, a very bad SAP implementation, basically. But I won't get into that.
What a bad one. What?
Was there a good one? No. Shh.
Are we getting any comments while we're talking?
No, everyone's left apart from Colin.
Okay.
It's us and Colin.
Colin.
Colin Hooper was saying shrinking frozen middle, and I replied to, yep, 86% was gone from the frozen middle. He did say, I wish Darby was here.
Don't we all?
Because he mentioned a really good comment regarding MBAs, that there's a lag factor, right? So the MBAs done in the 80s, the people who are in power now, whereas my MBA was real, like, the whole thing was agility. It was all like adapting to situation, very, very people-centric, leadership styles are great. It was great. So, we always get this overhang. So at 9 o'clock, everyone goes basically to do their own stuff. And then they come back and watch the rest of the video. But things like this conversation, I'll cut out because it's just me blabbing on.
No, definitely don't cut it out.
No? All right, fine.
Old.
Fine, I'll keep it.
This is what I'd sit up listening to, going, oh, great. Yeah, that's it.
What are these two youngsters talking about?
Oh, yeah.
Where was I going with that? But yeah, 70 FTE, 70 people. He wanted to get rid of, and he's commented to me, right? And I was what was I, 24 at the time? I think I was 24, 23.
How old are you, Mikey? You got to tell me.
I'm 34.
Yeah, I'm older than you.
Oh,
that's funny. Yep. Sorry, carry on.
Youngster.
But I'm young. Yep.
Yeah, you're hip. Wait, do we even say hip anymore? Probably not. He said to me, he goes, Michael, you don't understand though. These people don't want to work here. They think they do, but they don't want to work here. Because if they did, they would be valuable. They're not valuable. So I think if we just get rid of them, then I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but I was shocked. But I thought, oh, this is just how things are done. What I found, though, is they weren't being unreasonable during the SAP implementation. They had fear that they would lose their jobs. So they basically, and they didn't understand what was going on. There was no communication. There was no nothing. So when I started communicating with people, it all just like light bulbs went off in their head. They started being involved and loving it, and everyone he wanted to get rid of mostly stayed. And then we ended up getting rid of 40 contractors who he thought was amazing because they were the ones doing all the work. So sorry, contractors, that's my fault. But the permanent employees who've been there 20 years.
The first time they're going to learn about this.
Probably, actually.
Someone's listening in going,
nah, they won't remember me. I got a beard now. We're different. But yeah, it was that was so basically my job as a BA was actually to do a flow analysis on all the employees of this company. That's about 250 of them, and recommend basically who should be leaving. But as part of that, I got to know people, and getting to know people who've been there 10, 20 years was a real shock for me. It's interesting.
So what I'm curious then, what did you base your decision making around that on? What were the things? What were the factors?
A big one was stop selling IBM, which meant the whole of the IBM department would go, who were all contractors anyway, because the company was making a loss on IBM products.
Okay.
So that was a simple one. Another ones were basically their readiness to adapt to the new program and to obtain the productivity gains with SAP. Once they did that, they were more valuable. And by valuable, I mean I was attritioning percentage of value to the company to each employee. I had a really cool metrics. It was really cool.
So how would you decide that of the value that each of those people are bringing? Like what sort of things are you looking at?
You remember there's a 23-year-old Mikey who just basically left management accounting.
Yeah.
So I looked at the end profit margins of every units. I then looked at the supply and demand for every role type that there was along the way. I then looked at the percentage of productive based on the SAP guidelines relative to their position. So I integrated a massive matrix by saying, this person's 12% unproductive, this person here is 24% more productive, this person here, this whole unit is actually losing you money now. Because it's one thing that companies don't do very often. I don't recommend it nowadays, but back then I thought it was a genius. I would map the entire value chain and then say to you, actually, in this entire value chain, you're making a loss, IBM. This entire value chain, you're making a massive profit and you have less people in it. Here, you're actually breaking even, etc. And then when you dive into every value chain, you realize that certain business units were just not productive. The efficiency scores were very, very low because the handoffs were huge. And some of it was basically not knowing how to use systems. So that was obviously very easy to fix. Other things were just basically people just didn't want to do it. They just didn't. They had no interest. There was no purpose behind it. So
was it perceived that the most cost-effective approach to that was just to get rid of people?
So that was the original plan.
And then based on that, if you were doing this again now, would you take that same approach?
I'm still anti-contractor.
But you're someone who's never had an FTE.
Oh, of course. I should not be hired for long periods of time. Totally agree. So I
what do you think about the gig economy then?
Perfect.
But that's all that's based purely on contracting.
It's all outcome based, yeah.
So you don't think you should maintain contractors, but you see the value in the gig economy?
Yeah. So would I hire you in my company for 2 years? No, because I should hire a permanent employee for 2 years, right? And create that sense of involvement. Bear in mind, Surge works slightly differently. So we're all basically independent people and we all love each other as family. But from an organizational point of view, the CapEx cost is too high. So I'd rather you create a little family unit, and it's better to do that through OpEx personally. The gig economy though, where I agree with myself is actually on the fact is if I hire Cheryl for this course, mopeople.co, right, doesn't mean I'm going to hire Cheryl for the second course. See the difference? So the gig economy, the outcome is I send you 50 people, gig economy, great, but I'm not keeping you on. So one of the problems I've got with CapEx contractors at the moment is they're not fixing an outcome. They're fixing a problem in the organization that should go away by hiring the contractor in the first place. Does that make sense?
But it depends what kind of problem we're trying to solve, though, right? Like this, like if you're coming in to try and solve agility, for example,
Correct.
Someone's not going to come in
That's a
for
hard
3
job.
months. Yeah, exactly. You're not going to come in for 3 months. I guess. Well, I'm curious as well, because I want to come back to the values point.
Mm-hmm.
You said that you, in your own company, you run it differently.
Yeah.
Do you ever find a conflict between them? Like, if and I'm genuine. I'm not kind of having a say or having an opinion. I'm just sort of curious around, like, now that you've got into this sort of space of running your own company, do you ever like have conflicts between guiding other companies when you're like, but that's not how I would do it, and that's not how I am doing it?
So the most FTE I've ever had. So I had 34 FTE in a company in Auckland.
People.
Sorry.
Can you just humor me today? You can say FTE with everyone else that you interview.
So we had about 46 people.
Oh, beautiful humans.
And it was great. It was a good company. They were all permanent. It was treated like family. That's how I recommend companies roll. But Surge, we've gone a little bit different. Mostly from a scalable problem, like hiring people permanent is actually quite expensive. So we had to go that way for a financial reason. But two, the difference between us is we're very small. It's only 4, just becoming 5 now. It's a lot easier to maintain that family connection in a 5-person organization, whereas with a 500-person organization, people get lost in the weeds and they don't feel as valued. So Tim's probably left now, but Tim, I'm pretty certain he feels part of the whānau. It doesn't matter that he's not, here's your check every week, Tim. It's irrelevant because his place is set in stone. Whereas I reckon
I'm not going to check every week.
Well, every month, 20th of the month.
when he's behaving.
When he's a good boy. When he gets the metrics, when the metrics are done, and I tick him off.
Yeah.
This is the reason why we've made Colart the chief people officer.
Oh yeah. Man, he'll knock them into shape. I'm
the worst boss ever. I want to be your friend, or I'm going to basically dictate to you, and I'm terrible. I'm a terrible manager. I'm a good visionary, but that's pretty about it. But Colart's great at people.
You need to do some personal agility work by the sounds of it.
Oh, there you go. NoPeople.co. No, it's also something that doesn't appeal to me. I like people who choose me as a leader. I don't want to be their leader. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you want to follow me on Agility Matters, if you want to come to my events, if you want me to help you with a problem, I do lots of free one-on-one coaching for that reason. You're choosing me. It's one of my biggest bugbears, Cheryl. When I'm brought into organization and I've asked the teams, do you want me here? And then they normally ask, like, yes, of course we do. But they ask why. Why you say the question? I said, because if you ever say no, I'm leaving. I will never coach a team that doesn't want me.
Have you ever?
Did used to, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can only learn that rule through doing it. Unfortunately, right? You can tell people that. It's not until
no one believes you. No one believes you. And it's my CapEx rule is also about happiness as well. For instance, I'm a big believer. If anyone wants financial advice for being a contractor, come see me. I've done it my whole life. But living on 50% of your contracting rate is what you should be doing. And the reason why that is because then you're never fearful of losing your contract. And therefore you don't make rash decisions based upon your selfish needs, which happens a lot. It happens a lot. People make rash decisions based on their own selfish needs, and it's not good. It's not good for the organization, it's not good for the customer, it's not good for you, it's a person. Yeah. And where was I going with that?
I might need to shortly head and go.
Oh, we should definitely go. It's 10:10.
Check on it. Oh, this has been absolutely.
This is our longest chat ever.
Is it? Am I the longest chat ever?
No. This is as in you and me longest chat ever. We only chatted for like 20 minutes last time.
Yeah. No, this, I mean, and I would keep going if I could. I'm just conscious that I may be required back into the main room outside of
and my second battery will go at some stage anyway. So, well, I'm going to sign us off. And as I say, I think only Colin's here at the moment. We got 2 people. So who's the other person? Colin and who?
I don't know. I can't see anything.
I bet it's Tim. But he's listening in going, I'm getting paid this week, right? I'm getting paid. I won't get paid.
Can we ask, where's Colin? Where's Colin based?
Colin Cooper, where are you based, buddy?
Colin.
The problem is Colin may be watching like 10 minutes behind. So I find that the funniest when people ask questions. It's like, I said that 20 minutes ago.
Yeah.
Amazing, guys. Thank you. Yeah, I think he's about 2 minutes behind. So we'll just you know.
Oh,
that's brilliant. Well, thank you very much, Colin. Oh, there we go. Oh, UK.
Oh, nice.
Hello, Kia ora, Colin. So a UK person. And that's why you're still staying up, Colin, because for us, it's 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
We're going to bed now.
In it, Colin.
In it, bro. In it, mate. Oh, I'll bring my UK back. Okay, I'll let you go, Cheryl, and I'll close up. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mikey.
Kia ora koutou, everybody. And wasn't that just energizing? I want to reflect. I think one of the biggest things I got out of Cheryl's talk there is almost like I'm going to call it the virus-like different hit that you could actually do here, right? If personal agility was to go off and spread out, it would actually unravel the stack of cards of not only the hierarchy, but the way of thinking that is brought down from leaders. If leaders were to go onto the personal agility, I think we'll see change dramatically happen much faster as well. So I'm quite liking this approach. I love the 3 A's. I'm very liking the align one. That one did me well. And the flow. I love the flow. I should reflect more on this as well. Excellent. Thank you very much for listening to Agility Matters, where we look at adaptive organizations responding to customer needs and being flexible in that approach. I like to say good night and or good morning to Colin, and goodbye.